Does Charlie know?
Always 9 p.m. Saturday on 146.88. Duh.
Let's see. On MovieNet, Saturday, 10:30 p.m., W5FC.
I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That is correct, sir.
Skynet.
Skynet. Heard, let's begin. This is November Tango 5, Tango Mike. My name is Tony, and I'll be your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every Saturday night at 9 p.m. concerning the subject of astronomy. Our purpose is to help amateurs become more familiar with the nighttime and daytime sky, astronomy, and space in general. This net is open to all amateurs interested in this topic, and we encourage your participation, your comments, and your suggestions for this net. Stations with priority or emergency traffic may enter the net at any time by using the pro words break, break, followed by their call sign. Do we have anyone with emergency or priority traffic? Is a directed net. Please do not transmit without direction from net control. Tonight, that's me. And remember that stations are reminded to ID at the end of their transmissions. This weekly net operates on 146.880 megahertz with a PL tone of 110.9. Check-ins via Echolink are also possible using the W5FC-R station ID or the infamous node number 37247. Tonight's topics, astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio and video links are available online. Go to w5fc.org right now for the complete list, and remember to tell others about this popular net. All amateur operators are welcome. You do not need to be a member of this or any amateur radio club. We just want you to participate. This net is about 90 minutes long and is structured in many parts. Of course, we might not get to all of them, but we try. We have general announcements, Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events, National Space Society events, a discussion topic of the evening, up to me tonight, what you can see in the sky tonight, a featured constellation or object, recent astronomical discoveries, space exploration and space history, visible satellite passes over the next few days, an astronomical Q&A, and then a final best regards round, a 73 round. After that list, I'm out of breath. So let's get you to talk. Let's start by taking check-ins. We'll start with short-time check-ins, short-time stations, folks who would like to join us for the net, but who have to go soon. Short-timers, please come now with your call sign phonetically, name and location. Short-time stations at this time.
Is November 5, Whiskey Oscar India, William Ben Allen. Short time.
5 Whiskey Oscar India, William, short time in Allen. Those names always get me confused. William, I've got you on the list. Do we have any other short time stations? If so, please come now with your call sign phonetically, name and location. Okay, let's open up the net to general check-ins. Anyone who'd like to join Skynet over the radio waves, please come now with your call sign phonetically, name and location.
Yes. Kilo India 5 Echo Bravo Oscar Michael in Plano.
Kilo Golf 5 Whiskey Sierra Juliet David in East Dallas.
Yes. Kilo Bravo 5 Uniform November Zulu in Fort Worth, Max.
Yes. Kilo Foxtrot 5 Zulu Bravo Lima Bill, Farmers Branch.
November 5 Bravo Bravo, Bill in Irving.
This is Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima, Brenda DeSoto.
This Kilo Echo 5 India Charlie X-Ray Tom, Louisville.
This is Kilo 5, Kilo Tango X-Ray Kelly in Quinlan.
This Whiskey 5 Echo Bravo Bravo, David and Dallas. So 5 Juliet Delta Whiskey John and Coppell.
Is Whiskey Victor Lima, James and Carrollton.
This is Kilo Bravo 5, Papa Victor Tango, Ken in Hazlet.
Before I check everyone else in, we've had a station who began with a very well enunciated "this is" a couple times. Do you want to go ahead, sir?
Yes, I apologize. It seems I doubled twice. This is WD4MFI Whiskey Bravo number 4 Mike Foxtrot India Ted Dallas Low Power Long Time.
You always have the clearest and most distinctive check-ins. It's really appreciated. We do have a number of other stations on the list. I've got Kilo India 5 Echo Bravo Oscar Michael in Plano, Kilo Golf 5 Whiskey Sierra Juliet David in East Dallas, Kilo Bravo 5 Uniform November Zulu Max in Fort Worth, Kilo Bravo 5 Zulu Bravo Lima Bill in Farmers Branch, November 5 Bravo Bravo Bill in Irving, Whiskey Bravo 5 Oscar Zulu Lima Brenda in DeSoto, Kilo Echo 5 India Charlie X-Ray Tom in Louisville, Kilo 5 Kilo Tango X-Ray Kelly from Quinlan, Whiskey 5 Echo Bravo Bravo David in Dallas, Kilo 5 Juliet Delta Whiskey John in Capel, Station James in Carrollton who ended in Whiskey Victor Lima. Can I get your full call?
Kilo Golf 5 Whiskey Victor Lima, James.
And then I got Kilo Bravo Papa, Victor, Tango, Cannon, Hazlitt, and the famous Ted, Whiskey Bravo 4, Mike, Foxtrot, India, the most distinct check-in in any Skynet. Do we have anyone else who'd like to join us? Anyone else? Please come now with your call sign phonetically, name and location.
This is November 5, Yankee Echo Oscar Stephen in San Antone.
This is Kilo Golf 5, Zulu Charlie Tango, David and Frisco.
We had 3 check-ins there, all from Echolink, and I will take a round of Echolink check-ins, especially in just a minute. November 5, India, Mike Sierra, JJ in Carrollton. November 5, Yankee, Echo, Oscar, Stephen in San Antonio. And Kilo Golf 5, Zulu, Charlie Tango, David. I'll come back to Echolink in just a second. But for now, do we have any other RF check-ins? Anyone who'd like to check in over the air? Please come now with your call sign phonetically, name and location. Well, it sounds like we got all the over-the-air folks. Now I'm going to switch over to my Echolink window. I will have the chat open, so you can join me that way if you like. Anyone who'd like to join us by Echolink only, please come now with your call sign phonetically, name and location.
Kilo Golf 5, Bravo Zulu Whiskey, J, near Weatherford.
Kilo India 5, Bravo November Papa, Luis in Fort Worth.
Hey, I heard Kilo Golf Bravo Zulu Whiskey J, maybe in Aledo, but certainly near Weatherford, and Kilo India 5, Bravo November Papa, Luis in Fort Worth. Thank you very much for checking in. Okay, before we move on with the net, I'll take any check-in by any means. If you have a well-trained carrier pigeon or very clear talking parrot, if you have a radio, if you have Echolink, any way you'd like to check in, please come now with your call sign phonetically, name and location. Hey, that's quiet. Don't worry. There'll be lots of chances to check in later tonight. Do we have anyone with a general announcement for the net? Anyone with a general announcement? These can be ham, astronomical, space, or of anything that's general interest to licensed hams. Please come now with your call sign phonetically. Well, I know I was deficient earlier today. I wrote up a bunch of TextNet announcements, and then because of a surprise prior commitment that was supposed to be yesterday, I didn't get a chance to deliver them. I'd like to remind everyone that the next Dallas Amateur Radio Club meeting will take place this coming Tuesday, May 7th. Our presentation will be by the famous Jason Johnston, KC5HWB, discussing the differences between the Brandmeister and Mark DMR, digital mobile radio systems. Sooner than that, even sooner than that, the DARC has a radio day in the park. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. local time at Custer Park in Richardson. This is just a fun event to hang out and play radio, bring an antenna or a radio or a soda or just enthusiasm. Come on out to Custer Park tomorrow at 1 p.m. up in Richardson. Lots of operating events going on this weekend, QSO parties in many states, and even the entire 7th Call District. If you head over to w5fc.org and look for the TechNet announcements post, you can see lots of details about that news, more than I can really read here. Does anyone have any questions about these announcements? Or maybe while I was talking, you thought of an announcement of your own. That would be awesome. If you have a question or would like to bring an announcement, please come out with your call sign phonetically. T5 TM here, and remember, tomorrow is the Radio Play Day in the park, 1 p.m. at Custer Park in Richardson, 1 p.m. More details at w5fc.org. Please remember that the AMSAT, that's the Amateur Radio Satellite Group, has 2 nets available to Dallas residents. There's a local net Tuesday evenings this is the national net, Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Central Time. Get into Echolink, search for groups in AMSAT, and you'll find the Tuesday evening 8 p.m. Central Time net. There's also a live audio link from amsatnet.com. Local AMSAT net, which I'm guilty, I have not checked into for a couple of years, is every Wednesday at 9 p.m. on the Arlington repeater. Every Wednesday at 2100, the Arlington repeater 147.140, PL 110.9. Don't forget the Dallas Amateur Radio Club has lots and lots of nets. A different net every Monday night. Nets all night Saturday. This is the night of net. Meetings on the air the first and third Sunday. That includes tomorrow. We're having a meeting on the air right here at 7 p.m. You don't even have to be a member to check in tomorrow. You just have to like sharing what's been going on in your ham world. More details about all those nets at w5fc.org. Just click on Nets in the top menu. For now, though, I'm going to talk about tonight's Afterglow net. This means tonight at 7:30 p.m. because this is not our last net of the night. And Tom, KE5ICX, is our organizer for this net. So, Tom, what can you tell us about tonight's Afterglow net?
Thank you, Tony, and this is KE5ICX. I live for this moment. Here we go. Peter woke up from his dream. It was December 6th, 1941. It was Hawaii. Peter was from the future. You get the picture and where this is going. I really don't need to tell you, do I? Near him were those 2 guys from the time tunnel pestering some official about how the island would be attacked. Someone called security. Also, someone on the radio sounding suspiciously like an aircraft commander from the future was shouting, "Splash the zeros." It was confusing everyone, and it was making December 7th, tomorrow, almost seem like a rerun. Join us for the next Afterglow movie, The Time Element from 1958, arguably considered the first Twilight Zone episode, the TV show, only it's hosted by Desi Arnaz. Yeah, Desi Arnaz. That's tonight at 10:30. Join us, and remember, Lucy, you cannot be in the show. Back to net control, KE5ICX.
See, you got some splaining to do. You went backward and forward in time again. Yes, that's 10:30 tonight. Aaron caught me saying the wrong time earlier. It's not 7:30. 7:30 is in the past, only possible to time travelers. It's tonight at 10:30. right here on this repeater. This is NT5TM. Do we have anyone else who'd like to check in? Anyone who'd like to join us for the net by voice or chat? I'm listening and watching. Please come now with your call sign phonetically, name, and location. Heard. Let's move on. There'll be lots more chances to check in. Do we have any Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events, especially where and when you can look through a telescope? Any TAS of Dallas events? Someone who's got those, please come now with your call sign phonetically.
K5 KTX.
All right, Kelly, please go ahead.
Thank you, Tony. This is K5 KTX, and I will fill in for Chaz since lately he's been doing this segment, and I know he is out in Fort Davis for the Texas Star Party tonight. Starting with the monthly meetings, the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas has meetings every month on the fourth Friday of the month, except for November when the meeting is on the third Friday due to Thanksgiving, and there's usually no meeting in the month of December. The meetings are held at 7:30 p.m. at the University of Texas at Dallas campus in the Science Learning Center building. And you need to make sure that you can park pretty much in any parking spots except for those that are purple. And typically we park in lot H. So if you go to the UTD website and look at a campus map, look for lot H. And again, you can park pretty much anywhere except for the purple painted spots. We've been given special permission on those Friday evenings. And again, those are usually on the fourth Friday of the month at 7:30 p.m. And every other month they will have at 7 o'clock p.m. They will have a beginning astronomy session where they talk about different topics such as equipment and things like that. I do not have a speaker name for the month of May, so I don't have any information to give out on that. But be sure to check the TexasAstro.org website, and you can get up-to-date information. Now, every weekend, somewhere in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, we will have a star party. The first Saturday of the month, which is today, star party would be at Spring Park in Garland. However, they did cancel that event due to the field where we observe is extremely wet with all of the rain, and so that makes it difficult to set up telescopes. And it also invites those pesky little mosquitoes, which are pretty bad at this park. So it was canceled tonight, but normally on the first Saturday, it would be at Spring Park in Garland. On the second Saturday, the Star Party is held at Frisco Common Park in Frisco. The third Saturday is at J.W. Williams Park in Cedar Hill. And on the fourth Saturday, it's at the Shores Park in Rockwall. Each of these star parties are free and open to the public and very family-friendly, and it's a great place to learn about different types of telescopes if you are in the market for purchasing a telescope or any other types of gear like eyepieces and things like that. The people that own those telescopes love to talk about them and are more than happy to share information about those at each of those star parties. So be sure to go to TexasAstro.org, and at the top, click on the calendar link, and you can get details about all of the different events that we have. I also did want to mention that coming up this Tuesday, I know we have a Dallas Amateur Radio Club meeting, but they do on the first Tuesday of the month, they have an astrophotography group. So if you're interested in learning how to be an imager, this is a great place to learn. I've been to a couple of those meetings, and they're held at 6 o'clock p.m. at the Timber Glen Branch Library on Midway Road in Dallas. And I think that's all I have. This is K5 KTX. Back to you, Tony.
Hey, Kelly, thank you very, very much. I know it's been a tough year for star parties. There's been a lot of clouds and a lot of rain and a lot of wet fields. This is NT5TM, and I'd like to ask if there's anyone out there with news from the National Space Society. Anyone with news from the National Space Society? Perhaps there was a special day today. Please come now.
This is N5BB.
N5BB, please go ahead.
Yes, this is N5BB. Today was May the 4th. So you Star Wars fans should recognize May the 4th be with you. If I say it with a lisp, it sounds like May the 4th be with you. So the Fort Worth Museum of Science and History, which has been there a long time, but was rebuilt about, I think, a decade ago, had a event today, Star Wars themed. So the National Space Society North Texas chapter, including yours truly, were over there today to participate. Tony saw me earlier in the day at an amateur radio-related event, but that event fortunately ended early, so I was able to head over to Fort Worth immediately afterward. And we had lots of fun. As Tony realizes, I got a shot of me with some Star Wars musicians dressed up in little costumes and everything. And there were lots of interestingly dressed people walking around. And lots of kids. It was mainly for kids. So that was the event today. The next National Space Society North Texas chapter meeting will be a week from tomorrow, Sunday, May the 12th, at 3:30 p.m. in Irving at the Spring Creek Barbecue at Highway 183 in Beltline. I do not yet know the subject for that meeting. If it's been communicating to me, I've forgotten it. There is another event we're doing, which is the STEM Scouts STEM Fest. This goes on a week from today, on Saturday, May the 11th, from 9 to 2 at the UT Dallas Admissions and Visitor Center on Loop Road in Richardson. And that's a STEM Scouts STEM Fest, which the National Space Society will be participating at. On other space news, there was some unfortunate news back on, I think it was April the 20th. SpaceX was testing their Dragon capsule at Cape Canaveral, and they were testing the emergency escape system where some small rockets fire. And they were trying to test two different things, I believe. One of them was the small rockets, which will pull the Dragon capsule away from the rest of the rocket in case of emergency. And then following that, immediately, a few seconds later, they were trying to test some of the larger engines that are used for maneuvering the thing. And the first part of the test worked fine, but a few seconds later, the second part of the test led into disaster. SpaceX was very quiet about this for nearly 2 weeks, but they finally had a press conference and announced that, yep, they did have an explosive failure, and that particular SpaceX capsule was blown apart, although some of the parts are still not too badly damaged. The problem is evidently there's still some pressurized fuel and oxidizer containers and poisonous fuel at the site. So as of a couple of days ago, SpaceX had not been allowed by NASA to go and look at things close up. So they're doing forensic testing of it. Again, this was on the ground at a test area in Florida, Cape Canaveral, and there was pink smoke that came up after this failure. It's not good, but SpaceX will be working hard on it. SpaceX was hoping to fly 2 astronauts on the Dragon capsule later this year, in fact, late this summer, and it appears that they will delay that launch. Boeing also plans to be launching their CST-100 Starliner capsule. They're trying to do an automated launch, no humans, in August of this year to the International Space Station. So lots of things going on with manned space, with both SpaceX with their Dragon capsule and Boeing with their Commercial Crew capsule launching things this year and trying to get set up within the next 12 months for some manned space missions to the International Space Station with these. These are both similar to the Orion spacecraft. This is a third capsule, which is being built for NASA by Lockheed Martin. So we got 3 different things. We got Orion, built by Lockheed Martin for NASA. We've got Boeing building the CST-100 Starliner for NASA. And also we've got SpaceX, which is also working with NASA, but also doing other things, working with their Dragon capsule. So this is a really active year in manned spacecraft and preparation for putting humans on these new capsules. Exciting times, exciting times. That's all I got for now. This is N5BB.
Is NT5TM. Thank you, Bill, for keeping us well supplied with news. And yes, this is the golden age of commercial spaceflight. There was a Japanese company that had a suborbital launch today. We had a SpaceX cargo launch. And Electron, which is a U.S.-based competitor of SpaceX, although they focus on small launches, not large ones, has a launch going up. I think it's scheduled for tomorrow. They name all their launches, and tomorrow's launch is named That's a Funny-Looking Cactus. I'm not kidding. If you go to your favorite news site and search for That's a Funny-Looking Cactus, you'll find news about an orbital launch. Do we have anyone else who'd like to check in? Anyone who'd like to join us by any means, please come out with your call sign phonetically, name and location. Looking for any check-ins, please come out.
Alpha 5, Alpha Hotel, Robert Richardson.
Alpha Charlie 9, Kilo Victor, Romy, Mobile and Grapevine.
All right, very good. I've got Alpha 5, Alpha Hotel, Robert and Richardson, and Alpha Charlie 9, Kilo Victor, Romy, Mobile and Grapevine. Romy, I'm still so sorry I missed TechNet. This is Tony, NT5TM, for the Saturday Night Skynet, and I'd like to conduct my presentation for the evening. You've heard me remember space disasters, and I'm focusing now and then on understanding space disasters, what went wrong. And tonight, we're going to focus on just one space disaster, Apollo 1. Also known as AS-204, this was a different space disaster. In the past, I've discussed a lot of Soviet space accidents very quickly because they all had a common root cause: terrible quality control. Low standards combined with poor or non-existent testing resulted in some embarrassing failures and dramatic tragedies. But not all accidents result solely from poor quality control. There are plenty of other ways for things to go wrong in space. Fire, which took the lives of 3 American astronauts, may have been made possible by a little bit of poor quality control, but it was made tragic by well-intentioned design decisions. Some of them were very reasonable, and by surprises born of unfortunate inexperience. Anyways, the American space program was the opposite of the Soviet one. Extensive testing here in the U.S. was the norm in both military and civilian space projects. In fact, the Apollo 1 fire took place during one of the many pre-launch tests. The capsule had been previously tested not only with hyperbaric oxygen on the ground, as was the case in the fire, but in high-altitude chambers, in various simulators. It was an extensively tested piece of equipment. Launch simulation on January 27, 1967, on Pad 34, was a plugs-out test to determine whether the spacecraft would operate normally on internal power, which was simulated with external batteries, but was still meant to be internal power when detached from all ground support cables and umbilicals. Passing this test was essential to making the scheduled February 21st launch. The test was considered non-hazardous because neither the launch vehicle nor the spacecraft had any fuel or cryogenic liquids, and all the pyrotechnic systems, escape rockets, explosive bolts, were removed or disabled. p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that's 1800 UTC, on January 27, 1967. First, Gus Grissom, then Roger Chaffee, then Ed White entered the command module fully pressure-suited, and they were strapped into their seats and hooked up to the spacecraft's oxygen and communication systems. There were several delays as they went through their simulated countdown. There was first a bad smell in the capsule, then the hatches were sealed, and they worked on their simulated countdown. It was held up again at 5:40 p.m. Eastern, while attempts were made to troubleshoot an infamous communication problem. Grissom had famously remarked, "How are we supposed to go to the moon if we can't talk between 2 or 3 buildings?" And 4 seconds, one of the astronauts, probably Grissom, exclaimed, "A word, it's very hard to tell. Might have been hay or fire or flame. It had a vowel in it. It was very emphatic." This was followed by 2 seconds of scuffling noises through Grissom's microphone, which was stuck open. And then about 5 seconds later, someone, probably Chaffee, shouted, "We've got a fire in the cockpit." There was about 6 seconds of silence and then a final badly garbled transmission. It's really unclear, even to forensic scientists, what this transmission was. The word fire and out were both distinct. They might have said, "They're fighting a bad fire, let's get out," or "I'm reporting a bad fire, I'm getting out." But the transmission, no matter what it was, ended with a cry of pain. The intensity of the fire, fed by pure oxygen, caused the pressure in the capsule to rise to 29 pounds per square inch, which ruptured the inner wall of the command module just above the heat shield. Flames and gases then rushed outside the command module through open access panels into 2 levels of the retractable service structure. Intense heat, dense smoke, and almost useless gas masks, which were designed for toxic fumes like nitrogen tetroxide, prevented the ground crew from getting to the capsule to rescue the astronauts. All 3 were killed. Like the Soviet space disasters, which were basically predictable given the incredibly poor quality control and complete lack of testing of many Soviet spacecraft, this disaster was a surprise. The capsule had been extensively tested and was produced by the best engineers in the full light of public scrutiny. This was, in fact, a safety test. But inexperience, mistakes, and reasonable decisions can still create a disaster. Now, it's impossible to specify the exact cause of the fire, but the work of investigators made it possible to rule out many causes and to describe the kinds of things that could have started the fire. The entire capsule was disassembled after the accident. They even took apart another spacecraft for practice first, and it was found that no malfunctioning machinery was at fault. There was no overloaded space heater or overheating motor bearing. Likewise, the idea of a simple overloaded wire was almost completely ruled out. Circuits were protected with circuit breakers, and the Teflon insulation that was used was fire-resistant, even in a hyperbaric pure oxygen atmosphere. They were almost positive there were a couple of individual wires that were too badly damaged. Worried that the spacecraft cooling system was prone to leaks, which it was, and the coolant could have provided fuel for a fire. But they examined the remains of the cooling system and found that it was not what had ignited this fire. After careful study, it was found that the most likely culprit was an electric arc, a spark, where wires were damaged by rubbing against metal items in the capsule. In fact, it was found that wire bundles had often been installed poorly so that they could bend and rub against metal capsule parts and equipment doors, and there were many spots inside the capsule that had been pitted by electric arcs. It takes more than a spark to make a fire or a tragedy. I've mentioned that hyperbaric oxygen is very dangerous. Given enough oxygen, even people can ignite easily. But the capsule was also full of flammable Velcro, and the astronaut spacesuits were covered in flammable nylon. While other serious fires had already taken place in pure oxygen atmospheres, some, such as in the Soviet Union, were carefully kept secret, and others at U.S. Air Force laboratories had not received wide publicity. The incredible danger of a hyperbaric oxygen fire had not yet become part of the common lore of space engineers. Many design decisions that contributed to the fire. The pressure relief valve that would have let the pure oxygen out and allowed the inward swinging capsule hatch to open was small. The valve was hard to reach, and it allowed only a very low flow rate. This was all a good idea when you don't want to accidentally let all the air out of your space capsule. But it wasn't adequate to vent the pressure caused by the fire, even had Grissom been able to reach it. The capsule hatch was 3 layers. It was complex. It opened inward. This was all a good idea when you don't want it to accidentally explode open. But it was totally impractical as an emergency exit. Would-be rescuers were provided with gas masks to remove toxic fumes from the air, because spacecraft commonly did emit toxic fumes like monomethyl hydrogen or nitrogen tetroxide. But rescuers did not have firefighter-style SCBAs to provide them with oxygen when approaching a fire. In the layout of the crew access arm, the famous White Room played a part. Reaching the capsule required making several sharp turns and going down several steps. This made it very hard for rescuers, when they finally arrived wearing breathing gear, to reach the capsule quickly. And had the astronauts been able to escape, it would have made it very difficult for the crew to leave quickly if they'd been able to open the hatch. The infamous pure oxygen atmosphere was, in fact, perfectly reasonable, or it had seemed so. The pure oxygen prevented the dreaded and crippling bends from attacking the astronauts when the capsule gradually reduced its air pressure during launch, and when the astronauts had to go outside for EVAs. So, other than that spark, most of the elements of this disaster had in fact seemed like a good idea at the time. It was really a unique space tragedy, because poor quality control did contribute, but that wasn't the sole cause. A lack of testing could not be the cause, because this was a test. but the need for more experience and much more careful and wide-ranging thought given to a better design that allowed for a wider variety of emergencies was what was really required. The loss of our 3 astronauts was tragic, but the flaws they exposed in the Apollo program made a successful moon landing possible and far, far less dangerous. In fact, the decision made after the Apollo 1 fire to make electrical equipment and wiring harnesses completely watertight in case of any coolant leaks probably saved the Apollo 13 crew when they were forced to power up a wet, condensation-filled command module just before their reentry. Former site of Launch Complex 34 is one of the only sites of a space tragedy that you yourself can visit. It's part of a historic tour offered at the Kennedy Space Center called Cape Canaveral Then and Now. If you're listening to this net, you'd probably enjoy that tour if you do have the chance to take it. I know that Aaron and I have both taken that tour, and visiting the launch stand at LC-34 is one of the most important parts. You can also read the complete report of the Apollo 1 investigation report. Go to history.nasa.gov/Apollo204. Those last parts are figures. history.nasa.gov/Apollo204. You can both read the entire report complete with color pictures as a PDF or view it as a web page. Although I'll warn you, the web page is almost 20 years old and it's not in very good shape. This is NT5TM. Is there anyone checked in or not who has questions or comments or memories of Apollo 1? Anyone checked in or not who has anything to add? Please come out with your call signed phonetically.
E5ICX.
E5ICX, go ahead.
Tony, your comments are excellent, and I have read the AS204 report many years ago. Kind of an interesting thing about all this was that back when this was reported, the fire on television, I'm old enough to remember that night when it showed up, and on CBS, this is at a time before 24/7 news cycle, you literally, they broke into, from a television program, a regular, dramatic series thing that was on, and Associated Press, that's what I'm thinking of, an API report, Associated Press International report, had actually been taken out off of the teletype machine, placed on a cardboard material, and then placed in front of the camera with no audio, mentioning at first that one of the astronauts had died in the fire or the mishap. They weren't sure what was happening at the time. It was all done in capital letters and that, which is really kind of odd at the time. And then they came back about 10 minutes later and said that all 3 astronauts had died in January 27th. The thing about it was that everybody was so unprepared that this would happen. The program had done extremely well. Let me reset. Up to that point, everything had gone very well. North American was overwhelmed at the time trying to get the command module ready to go, and they were also having their own issues with the Saturn V and the second stage, which they were also building. And it caused a lot of trouble within that company as well to get things done, plus they were being browbeaten by Werner von Braun. So there was a lot of other stuff going on, as well as trying to make sure that they made a schedule to get to the moon. But you're right, one of the things that came out of this was that we did have successful missions after that. This stand down, this 21-month stand down, actually saved the program. I think we would have lost astronauts in space had it not happened. And the Apollo 13 thing probably would have happened on one of the very first missions into space, into orbit, maybe to the moon. So that extra time was very important, and it made for a very successful Apollo program after that, even the Skylab program that came after that. All extremely successful, not without problems. With something that complex, there were always problems, but no one died. And I think that, unfortunately, this was a bad thing, but in the end, it did lead to successful missions to the moon and success of the space race lunar missions. KE5ICX.
KE5ICX from NT5TM. Thank you very much, Tom, for your comments. Do we have anyone else before we move on? Please come now. Hey, I don't think Chaz is with us tonight, but just in case, do we have Chaz for What's Up, KF5JHA from NT5TM? Okay, well, I will read some of these notes that were sent in. We do have a meteor shower coming up, the Eta Aquarids. Those will be best between midnight and dawn on the next 3 nights, May 4th, 5th, and 6th. For dawn these next several mornings, please watch for meteors in the annual Eta Aquarid meteor shower to streak across the heavens in the inky dark sky, unmarred by moonlight. We expect the morning of May 5th to showcase the peak number of meteors. But try the mornings before and after as well, as this meteor shower has a relatively broad peak. Although the shower can be seen from all parts of the Earth, these meteors are especially fine from the southern hemisphere and for the more southerly latitudes in the northern hemisphere. Appreciably north of 40 degrees north latitude, like Denver, Colorado, the meteors are few and far between. learn more, we do have a link up at w5sc.org why more Eta Aquarid meteors are visible in the southern hemisphere. Like most meteors in annual showers, they are debris left behind by a comet, and in this case, it's a very famous comet indeed. Every year as Earth passes through the orbital path of Comet Halley, Halley's Comet, bits and pieces shed by this comet burn up in the Earth's atmosphere as the Eta Aquarid meteors. Under ideal conditions, the shower produces 20 to 40 meteors per hour, and if you're in the southern hemisphere and you have a very dark sky, you might see that many since this year in 2019. There is, again, no moon to ruin the show. As always, being away from city lights is best. Again, from my own experience, if you can stay up, which I can't, I'm very sleepy, but if you can stay up, that period between midnight and dawn is always best for meteor showers, because that's when the part of the sky directly above you is facing the onrushing traffic in space. It's when the sky over your head is facing forward into space. This is NT5TM. Do we have any check-ins? Anyone who'd like to join us, please come now with your call sign phonetically.
Hello, Foxtrot 5, India Victor Juliet.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Tango Hotel Bravo, Brent and Henrietta.
I heard KF5IVJ and KF5THB. I think there was a third station, though. Any other check-ins? Please come now.
Hello, Foxtrot 5, Papa Foxtrot Charlie.
Hey, KF5PFC. Thank you, sir, for checking in. Okay, Tom, I have a question for you. Do I read the next part for Carolyn, or is that mine?
Tony, I forgot to mention one way or the other. If you would like me to, I can either way. I'm just going to read the same thing unless you want to. KE5I6.
Tom, why don't you go ahead? NT5TM to KE5ICX.
So, but I leave it to you. All right, well, this is KE5ICX. My name's Tom. I did want to mention that Miss Carolyn, KC5OZT, hasn't been on the net the last several weeks. She's been going through chemotherapy and is currently in hospice. Now, normally we wouldn't say anything on the air, but she mentioned that she wanted you to know that she was in chemotherapy and that there would be times that she would be out. This is one of those times. So we'd like you to remember her in your thoughts and prayers, and we hope she comes back, and we'll come back with a speedy recovery. I'll give you more information as I find out. There's a few. Carolyn has always been a part of the community, so there's more than just one person who knows what's going on, and we'll pass that information along as it becomes available. So this is her segment usually. We usually have a featured constellation, object, or topic. Tonight we're going to do a topic. We're going to talk about, what are we talking? Boy, I wish you were here right now. We're talking about galaxies. This information came from the Cornell University website and involves different types of galaxies that you might spot in the sky. There are three main types of galaxies. They are elliptical, spiral, and irregular. Two of these three types are further divided and classified into a system that is now known as the tuning fork diagram. Why? Well, it looks like a tuning fork, of course. When Hubble first created this diagram, he believed that this was the evolutionary sequence as well as a classification system. If you're watching the video, or if you go to w5fc.org, you'll find some of the pictures here to help illustrate that, since it's kind of hard to describe on the radio. Just look for the tuning fork diagram so you can see this so-called evolutionary process. And then the next thing is elliptical galaxies. M87 is the example that they give. This is an elliptical galaxies are shaped as like a spheroid or elongated sphere. In the sky where you can only see two of their three dimensions, these galaxies look like they're elliptical or oval or shaped disks. The light is smooth with the surface brightness decreasing as you go further out from the center. Elliptical galaxies are also given a classification that corresponds to their elongation from a perfect circle, otherwise known as their ellipticity. The larger the number, the more elliptical the galaxy is. So, for example, a galaxy of classification of E0 appears to be perfectly circular, while a classification of E7 is very flattened. The elliptical scale varies from E0 to E7. Elliptical galaxies have no particular axis of rotation. Spherical galaxies, and the one we have here is M100 as an example. Spiral galaxies have three main components. They have a bulge, a disk, and a halo. The bulge is a spherical structure found in the center of the galaxy. This feature mostly contains older stars. The disk is made up of dust, gas, and younger stars. The disk forms arm structures. Our sun is located in an arm of our galaxy, the Milky Way. The halo of a galaxy is a loose spherical structure located around the bulge of some of the disk. The halo contains old clusters of stars known as globular clusters. Spherical galaxies are classified into two groups. There's the ordinary and barred. The ordinary group is designated by an S or SA, and the barred group by SB. In normal spirals, as seen in the picture I'm showing, the arms originate directly from the nucleus or bulge, where in the barred spirals there is barred material that runs through the nucleus that the stars emerge from. Both of these types are given a classification according to how tightly their arms are wound. The classifications are A, B, C, and D, with A having the tightest arms. In type A, the arms are usually not well defined and form almost a circular pattern. Sometimes you will see the classification of a galaxy with two lowercase letters. This means that the tightness of the spiral structure is halfway between those two letters. Mentioned here also S0 galaxies are an intermediate type of galaxy between E7 and the true spiral SA. They differ from ellipticals because they have a bulge and a thin disk, but are different from the SA because they have no spiral structure. SO galaxies are also known as the lenticular galaxies. Other two. This one doesn't fit. Irregular galaxies have no regular or symmetrical structure. They are divided into two groups, the IRRI and IRR2. I guess that's IRR1 and IRR2. The IRR1 type galaxies have H2 regions, which are regions of elemental hydrogen gas and many population 1 stars, which are young hot stars. IRR2 galaxies simply seem to have large amounts of dust that block most of the light from the stars. All that dust makes it almost impossible to see distinct stars in the galaxy. Well, that was a bit short and sweet this evening, but that'll give you some information on some of the galaxy information. I'm sure you can find a course or materials on this that could go on for quite a lot longer, describing all of the galaxies. They don't mention, irregular galaxies typically are caused by two galaxies that are formed in some orderly fashion that have kind of crashed into one another and have caused the structure to disintegrate. We've also learned, of course, that all galaxies at their core seem to have a black hole, which provides the gravitational pull, and through the rotation allows for the formations that we see in an orderly fashion. But the galactic evolution understanding, it continues to be learned, and there's more and more that are coming each and every day in regards to this whole thing, including dark matter, dark energy, and all of that. So there's much more to learn about galaxies and their galactic formations and how they eventually evolve or devolve, I guess. I'm not a super expert on this topic, but if anybody has any questions, please come now. One with any comments? Hey, Tony, I send the net back to you, NT5TM from KE5ICX.
Thank you very much, Tom. This is Tony, NT5TM. Do we have anyone else who'd like to check in? Anyone who'd like to join us, RF or Echolink, please come now with your call sign phonetically, name and location. I did get an Echolink check-in from Mike, KG5P, out at the Texas Star Party. Mike, we're glad you're here. And I heard a station that was almost completely noise. If you can speak loudly and slowly and give your call sign phonetically, if you're on an HT, make sure the antenna is straight up and down and keep it on the same side of your body as the SMU campus in North Dallas. That noisy station that wasn't KG5P, make your antenna vertical and please give it another try. Hello, Golf 5, something Mike. Kilo Charlie 5, Zulu Charlie Mike. Did I get you?
That was close. Kilo Charlie 5, Kilo Yankee Mike.
All right, thank you for sticking with me. Kilo Charlie 5, Kilo Yankee Mike. Thank you very much for checking in. This is NT5TM for the Saturday Night Skynet. Brenda, WB5OZL, would you please go ahead with our recent astronomical discoveries?
Yes, thank you, Tony. This is WB5OZL. First article is entitled Milky Way Star with Strange Chemistry is from Dwarf Galaxy. Astronomers have discovered a star in the Milky Way galaxy with a chemical composition unlike any other star in our galaxy. This chemical composition has been seen in a small number of stars in dwarf galaxies orbiting the Milky Way. This suggests that the star was part of a dwarf galaxy that merged into the Milky Way. The LAMOST, Large Sky Area Multi-Object Fiber Spectroscopic Telescope survey data, researchers noticed the star J1124 plus 4535 for its unusual chemical composition. Initial observations showed that it was located in the constellation Ursa Major, that's the Big Dipper, had low abundances of certain elements such as magnesium. Follow-up observations with the high dispersion spectrograph of the Subaru telescope confirmed the low levels of magnesium but found comparatively high levels of europium. This is the first time an element ratio like this has been observed in a star in the Milky Way. Stars form from clouds of interstellar gas. The element ratios of the parent cloud impart an observable chemical signature on stars formed in that cloud. So stars formed close together have similar element ratios. The composition of this star doesn't match any other stars in the Milky Way, indicating that it must have formed elsewhere. Chemical signatures similar to it have been observed in some stars in dwarf galaxies orbiting the Milky Way. Galaxy evolution models and simulations suggest that galaxies like the Milky Way grow by absorbing neighboring dwarf galaxies. Thus, it makes sense that it was born in a now vanished dwarf galaxy which merged into the Milky Way. Okay, next article. Pinpointing Gaia to map the Milky Way. ESO's VST helps determine the spacecraft's orbit to enable the most accurate map ever of more than 1 billion stars. Gaia, operated by the European Space Agency, ESA, surveys the sky from create the largest, most precise three-dimensional map of our galaxy. 1 year ago, the Gaia mission produced its much-awaited second data release, which included high-precision measurements, positions, distance, and proper motions of more than 1 billion stars in our Milky Way galaxy. This catalog has enabled transformational studies in many fields of astronomy, addressing the structure, origin, and evolution of the Milky Way, and generating more than 1,700 scientific publications since its launch in 2013. In order to reach the accuracy necessary for Gaia's sky maps, it is crucial to pinpoint the position of the spacecraft from Earth. Therefore, while Gaia scans the sky, gathering data for its stellar census, astronomers regularly monitor its position using a global network of optical telescopes, including the VST at ESO's Paranal Observatory. The VST is currently the largest survey telescope observing the sky in visible light and records Gaia's position in the sky every second night throughout the year. Gaia observations require special observing procedure, explained to Monica Petter-Goetsen, who has coordinated the execution of ESO's observations of Gaia since 2013. The spacecraft is what we call a moving target, as it is moving quickly relative to background stars. Tracking Gaia is quite the challenge. EST is the perfect tool for picking out the motion of Gaia, elaborated Ferdinando Patat, head of the ESO's Observing Programs Office. Using one of ESO's first-rate ground-based facilities to bolster cutting-edge space observations is a fine example of scientific cooperation. This is an exciting ground-based collaboration using one of ESO's world-class telescopes to anchor the trailblazing observations of ESA's billion-star surveyor, commented Timo Prusti, Gaia project scientist at ESA. The VST observations are used by ESA's flight dynamics experts to track Gaia and refine the knowledge of the spacecraft's orbits. Painstaking calibration is required to transform the observations, in which Gaia is just a speck of light among the bright stars, into meaningful orbital information. Data from Gaia's second release was used to identify each of the stars in the field of view and allowed the position of the spacecraft to be calculated with astonishing precision, up to 20 milliarc seconds. This is a challenging process. We're using Gaia's measurements of the stars to calibrate the position of the Gaia spacecraft and ultimately improve its measurements of the stars, explains Timo Prusti. Careful and lengthy data processing, we now have achieved the accuracy required for the ground-based observations of Gaia to be implemented as part of the orbit determination, says Martin Altman, lead of the ground-based optical tracking, GBOT, campaign at the Center for Astronomy of Heidelberg University, Germany. The GBOT information will be used to improve our knowledge of Gaia's orbit, not only in observations to come, but also for all the data that have been gathered from Earth in the previous years, leading to improvements in the data products that will be included in future releases. Okay, that is all I have. So these are both in ScienceDaily.com. I'll turn it back to Nat. This is WB50ZL.
This is NT5TM. It's been kind of a light week in space history. We did have a little news this week. We did have a SpaceX cargo launch to the International Space Station, and we do have, as I mentioned earlier, an Electron launch of a couple of Air Force satellites coming up tomorrow. with the amusing name, That's a Funny Looking Cactus. Probably the most interesting piece of space news this week is an old piece. NASA has been investigating the failure of two satellite launches from more than a decade ago. The Orbiting Carbon Observatory and GLORY. Both of these were space probes meant to orbit the Earth. Orbiting Carbon Observatory would have studied carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and GLORY was meant to study pollution by aerosols, like the smog-forming sulfur dioxide. They both used the Taurus XL rocket. Like most rockets, it had a big payload fairing on top that was supposed to separate and let the satellites out, and it didn't. It didn't. The satellites ended up in the ocean, which is not the correct place. Why was this? Well, the fairing separated using explosive parts. These are really frangible parts. They're made of metal. They have explosives embedded in them, and they're meant to fly apart. This only works if the parts are both strong and brittle, like the glass in an automobile window. It's strong until suddenly it breaks into a zillion pieces. The supplier of these metal fairing parts was, well, a liar. Their pants were on fire, like the satellites. They lied about the quality of metal they were supplying and the tests they performed on it. You always know a launch investigation is going the wrong way when NASA involves the Department of Justice. Supplier will unfortunately only be forced to pay about $64 million of the billion-dollar cost of the two satellites that were destroyed. You go to your favorite news site and search for aluminum and fraud. This will be the first story. Have a look. It'll make you angry, too. We do have some space history items. On May 1st, 1925, Scott Carpenter was born. He was an American naval aviator, test pilot, engineer, astronaut, and deep-sea diver. He was one of the Mercury 7 astronauts selected way back in April of '59, and he was the second American after John Glenn to orbit the Earth. Performance in space was subject to controversy. NASA officials believe that he'd wasted fuel and paid insufficient attention to managing his reentry. It was later found that the automatic horizon scanning system had caused most of the fuel waste, and the reentry button hadn't worked when he pressed it. Nevertheless, the flight director had vowed that Scott Carpenter would never fly in space again, and so he became an aquanaut, working with the U.S. Navy on creating pioneering deep-sea submarines and underwater habitats. May 3rd, 2007, astronaut Wally Schirra passed away. He flew on Gemini 6A, Apollo 7, and of course in the Mercury project. Was one of our Mercury 7 astronauts and also part of Gemini 6A, a space probe that was able to rendezvous successfully with Gemini 7. The Soviets had conducted so-called rendezvous in the past for spacecraft whooshed past one another at a velocity of hundreds of meters per second and several kilometers apart, but they were deeply frightened by Gemini 6A and 7 keeping station with each other just a few feet apart for hours at a time. It showed that the U.S. was developing real skills in space. Schirra was also famous for not firing the ejection seats during the first launch attempt for Gemini 6A. The engine started and then immediately shut down. Policy called for the astronauts to eject. He didn't, because no one really trusted the ejection seats, and they were famous for causing serious injuries to crash test dummies. His decision was the correct one. There was no fire, and the spacecraft lifted off successfully just a couple of days later. Also reported a UFO, and it strangely made the sound of jingle bells. It was a Christmas practical joke he played on Mission Control. He was also the commander of Apollo 7, a spacecraft which you can see locally at the Frontiers of Flight Museum. conducted the first live television broadcast from space and also, unfortunately, suffered the first head colds in outer space. They re-entered the Earth's atmosphere without wearing their helmets, a matter of some controversy to mission control. So in space history, on May 4th, 1989, the Magellan Radar Mapper was launched by the Space Shuttle Atlantis. This was the first deep space probe ever launched from a space shuttle, the first one to use the big inertial upper stage solid rocket booster to leave the space shuttle, and the first spacecraft to test aerobraking, that is, using the atmospheric drag of another planet as a method for slowing down and circularizing its orbit. And used a huge radar antenna to pierce through the thick clouds of Venus and compile the first accurate map of its surface. It was the fifth successful NASA mission to Venus, and it ended an 11-year gap in U.S. interplanetary space missions. As I mentioned, it was a light week in space history. I'd like to encourage you to learn more about Magellan or Wally Schirra or Scott Carpenter. They're all interesting topics. But that completes This Week in Space History. I'm NT5TM. Do we have anyone else out there who'd like to join us? Anyone who'd like to check in, please come now with your call sign phonetically, name and location. That sounded quiet to me. Tom, KE5ICX, you're up for visible satellite passes over the next few days.
Thank you, Tony. Boy, I don't have much to give out tonight. There's not very favorable passes of any type. Most of them are low to the horizon. I was able to bring out only one pass. That's got to be a record tonight. OTV-5, US 277. That is the super secret winged spacecraft by the Air Force. I believe it has exceeded 600 days now in orbit. I think I read somewhere. It's super secret. Nobody will talk about it, obviously. Otherwise, it wouldn't be secret. There's only one good pass. This is it. May 12th. And it's a partial pass. It's a 21:59 local time. Reaches its highest point at 22:01 at 50 degrees. This is out of the northwest. The brightness, they have never determined the brightness of this thing. I'm not quite sure why. It's the only satellite that is listed at Heavens Above that does not have a magnitude listed with it, so I'm not quite sure why. I've never witnessed this thing in person. I imagine it's fairly faint, but it's there. It goes into shadow at 21:13 at 50 degrees, so let's see here. I'm going to look at the chart. Yep, this doesn't get very far in the sky out of the northwest. Goes through Auriga, and then through Lynx, and then it disappears into shadow through Leo Minor. Poor showing this week, poor showing. Sorry about that, everybody. That's all I got for you. This is KE5ICX, back to net control. We have a lot of our best question answering people missing, but we do have smart folks here who can try to help. Do we have anyone out there with a question about anything we've talked about tonight? Anyone with a question about anything we've talked about tonight? This is our Q&A section. Anyone with a question, please come now with your call sign phonetically. I'm glad we have answered all your questions for you already. Let's take a final round of check-ins. This is final call, final call, final call. Did I make that clear? This is final call. Anyone who'd like to join us, this is last chance to check in. Come with your call sign phonetically, name and location,
And this is final call for check-ins. Nothing heard. I do see an offer of some extra commentary here over on Echolink. Kelly, K5KTX, would you like to share a few words about the Texas Star Party?
Hey, Tony, this is K5KTX, and I returned very late last night from the annual Texas Star Party. This was my 13th. Well, I'm calling it 12 and a half because I didn't want to say 13, but it was the 13th Texas Star Party for me. Unfortunately, I had to return early because I had a Master Burger class this morning, and so I missed out on 2 great nights. I've heard that last night was just fantastic, and Mike over on Echolink says that tonight is pretty good as well. But the few nights that I did have were great, and I really enjoyed getting to see so many friends, and also just some incredible skies. The Milky Way coming up early in the morning is just an amazing sight to see. And if you've never seen it, I recommend that you go out to West Texas and stay up late and see that. It's quite a sight. So every year at the Texas Star Party, they have various observing lists that you can do, or you can, of course, do your own thing. But I have always done the various observing lists, and this year's theme was smoke and mirrors. A very fun list to do. It was I think it was 45 objects total on the list, and about a third of those were dark and bright nebulas, and some of those I just could not see at all, but I did see some of them. The rest, the mirrors part, were galaxy pairs, and most of them were, some of them were ones that we're all familiar with, like M81 and 82, and the Whirlpool Galaxy with its little companion, the antennae galaxies, but there were some little teeny tiny ones. There were 4 that I could not see in my 14-inch telescope, but I was able to see all the rest of them. So it was a fun list to do, and I got a pin for observing all of those. In addition to all of the great astronomy, amateur astronomy, and before I go on to the ham radio portion, I wanted to talk about a telescope that was set up in front of me. Was just the most amazing telescope. It had a name. It was called Elvira. It was a 24-inch, very F-ratio scope. Normally a scope with a 24-inch mirror would be really big, and you would have to have a ladder, but this was a very a short telescope that barely just need a step stool to get on to take a look at. And if I understand, I didn't hear the whole story about this telescope, but I believe it was made by the person who owned it, everything except for the mirror, I think, and he built a robotic transporter that carried the base of this telescope around the Prude Ranch, and that was an interesting to see that as well. But the guy who his name is Ed, who owns that telescope, was extremely nice. He was letting people operate the telescope, and we were able to get some really great views through it. He also had this other little cool device, and I didn't even want to ask how much he paid for this thing, but there were lots of people looking through it. It was a night vision scope that he was also using with the telescope sometimes. I didn't get to look at it through there, but I did just get to look through the scope. This is military grade, night vision, and you could see stars even through the clouds. It was like a cloud filter, seriously, where you could see stars all the way down to the horizon. It was just amazing to look through this thing. So there were lots of neat things to look at. I saw some really neat, some other amateur-made telescopes that were pretty interesting. And of course, during the week, there's always lots of ham radio activities going on. They have a lot of HF activities, a special event station, W5TSP. But in addition to that, they have a Yaesu System Fusion repeater on site. And we had an emergency drill. We have an emergency drill every year on the radio. I was the net control for the last 2 years. It did not. I let somebody else do it this year. So it's kind of neat, all the different ham radio activities that take place during the week. So again, it was a great week. If you go to texasstarparty.org, you can get all kinds of information about some of the events going on. I'm sure right about now they're all having a great time, getting ready to wrap up for the week. And I will turn it back over to you, Tony. This is K5KTX.
T5TM. Well, Kelly, thank you very much for sharing. Everyone always has such wonderful things to say about the Texas Star Party. You really do make me want to go out there and go. It's really something impressive. What a strange comment on Echo. Okay. Does anyone have any final comments? This is our 73 round. I mean, my final comment is I wish I were at the Texas Star Party. But anyone else who has a final thought for the net, please come now with your call sign phonetically, and I'll call on you. Anyone with a final comment, please come now. All right, well, thank you again, Kelly, and thank you, Tom, and thank you to everyone who checked in this evening and supported our net. I do hope that you'll join us here next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. We had 26 hams tonight, and we all believe that on this net, the sky is never the limit. We're always looking for net control stations for this and all the DARC nets. If you'd like to try your hand at this, you don't have to make a big commitment. You can just give a presentation or take some check-ins. Just send an email to nets at w5fc.org. You can follow topics and discussion about this net or astronomy in general on Facebook, as well as the live audio and video streams, video archives, and other resources at w5fc.org. Until next Saturday night, this is NT5TM Tony, closing this net at 22:31 local time and returning the repeater to normal amateur use for a couple of minutes. 73, everybody. Enjoy the evening discovering the universe. And remember that we do have the Afterglow movie discussion coming up very shortly. I'll be asleep, but you might enjoy it very much. NT5TM.
This is KE5ICX. We'll begin the Afterglow Movie Net in about 5 minutes. We'll be discussing the 1958 Westinghouse Theater television program, 90-minute program called The Time Element from 1958, written by Rod Serling, and the inspiration for the Twilight Zone. 5 minutes away. KE5ICX.
Thank you again for all your help. I'm going to sleep. NT5TM.
And does anybody need to use a repeater before we begin the Afterglow movie net? I take that as a no. This is KE5ICX. My name's Tom. I'll be your net control for tonight's Afterglow Movie Net. Tonight's movie that we're discussing is actually from a television show. I believe it was a 90-minute Westinghouse Theater production. I have some information on it. Hopefully you did see it. If you are wondering what this is, weekly we find a movie, or even next week will be a couple of shorts talking about something with a science fiction topic, and we discuss the plot, the characterization, the special effects, and anything we want to say about the whole premise of whatever it is we're watching. If you'd like to be a part of this and you're listening in now but you've not had a chance to find out ahead of time what the movie is, you can either wait until the very end of this net, we'll give you the information, or you can join Facebook and the Afterglow movie, that's 2 words, Afterglow and movie, page on Facebook, and you can get the list of films that we are proposing as well as 2 weeks in advance. Another thing you can do too is you can send me an email if you're not a Facebook type. Send it to KE5ICX, Kilo Echo 5, India Charlie X-Ray at yahoo.com. Say you'd like to be added to the list, and I will put you on the blind list for the movie that we will be watching that week. That information is provided usually Sunday morning, once I've had a couple of cups of coffee with whatever the movie information is and the links. We try and do movies that you can find online. They're commercially available either with advertising or free of charge. Usually YouTube, or it could be, I found a treasure trove of terrible movies over on Tubi, so we may be doing those. Tubi or not Tubi, you ask. I have answers. All right, here I will give you the synopses of the story, and then I'll go ahead and take check-in, so be ready. Here we go. The time element was the original pilot for The Twilight Zone, or so they say. This comes from the fandom wiki for The Twilight Zone, no less. Time Element was a teleplay that premiered on November 24th, 1958. It was Rod Serling's first science fiction story. It's a story that deals with time travel and the concept of illusion versus reality. This teleplay also gave audiences the first glimpse into what would become Serling's signature writing style, the plot twist. However, when CBS first looked at the script, they thought little of it, and the script was shelved. But then Bert Granite, producer of the Westinghouse Desilu Playhouse, needed a script. He looked through the CBS vaults and found The Time Element. Desi Arnaz introduced the episode, and it starred William Bendix, Martin Balson, Daryl Hickman, and Carol Kearney. So here's the plot. The story is a time travel fantasy of sorts involving a man named Peter Jensen, played by William Bendix, visiting a psychoanalyst, Dr. Gillespie, played by Martin Balson, and with complaints of a recurring dream in which he imagines waking up in Honolulu just prior to the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Says, I wake up in a hotel room in Honolulu, and it's 1941. And I mean, I really wake up, and it really is 1941, he explains, concluding that these are not mere dreams. He actually is traveling through time. However, Dr. Gillespie insists that time travel is impossible given the nature of temporal paradoxes. During his dream, taking advantage of the situation, he bets on all the winning horses, all the right teams, and eventually tries unsuccessfully to warn others, the newspaper, the military, anyone, that the Japanese are planning a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. His warnings are seen as crazed ravings and are either ignored or met with physical violence as he's punched out by an engineer who works on the USS Arizona after insisting that it would be sunk on December 7th. Jensen's dreams always end with the Japanese bombers flying overhead on the morning of December 7th, prompting him to yell out, "I told you, why wouldn't anyone listen to me?" Jensen finally discloses to Dr. Gillespie that he was actually in Honolulu on December 7th, 1941. While on the couch, Jensen falls asleep once again, only this time Japanese planes flying overhead shoot inside the windows of his room and he's killed. When the camera cuts back to the doctor's office, the couch Jensen was lying on is now empty, and Dr. Gillespie looks around confused. Although Jensen has earlier, the ashtray is empty. He looks at it in his appointment book and finds he has no appointment scheduled for this day. Gillespie goes to a bar and finds Jensen's picture on the wall. The bartender said that Jensen tended bar there, but was killed in Pearl Harbor. Then a little bit on the production, just a couple of paragraphs. With this script, Serling drafted the fundamental elements that would distinguish the series still to come: a science fiction fantasy theme, opening and closing narration, and an ending with a twist. What would prove popular with audiences and critics in 1959 did not meet network standards in 1957. The time element was purchased only to be shelved indefinitely, and talks of making The Twilight Zone a television series ended. This is where things stood with Bert Grennett, the new producer of Westinghouse Desilu Playhouse, discovered the time element in the vaults while searching for an original Serling script to add prestige to his show. The time element, introduced by Desi Arnaz, debuted on November 24, 1958, in an overwhelmingly delighted audience of television viewers and critics alike. Quote, "The humor and sincerity of Mr. Serling's dialogue made the time element consistently entertaining," offered Jack Gold in the New York Times. Over 6,000 letters of praise flooded Granite's office. Convinced that the series based on such stories could succeed, CBS again began talks with Serling about possibilities of producing The Twilight Zone. Where Is Everybody was accepted as the pilot episode, and the project was officially announced to the public in early 1959. The time element is rarely aired on television, and it was only available in an Italian DVD box set entitled Al Confine della Realtà, I Tesori Perduti, until it was shown as part of an all-night sneak preview of a new cable channel called TV Land. With that, I'm going to go ahead and take check-ins. If you'd like to join us this evening, please come with your call sign name, where you're transmitting from. Let me know if you saw it or not. That doesn't mean you can't participate if you didn't, but if you did, I kind of like to know that. So please come with your call sign name, where you're transmitting from. Did you see tonight's movie?
This is N5BB. Bill in Irving. Yes, I saw this fantastic production.
This is KI5EBO, Michael in Plano, and yes, I saw it, and I enjoyed it.
Kilo 5 Kilo, Whiskey Papa, Chris, mobile, headed from Fort Worth over to Grapevine. I don't remember seeing that movie.
Let me get those three check-ins. I've got N5BB, Bill over in Irving, he saw it. K5EBO, Michael in Plano, you saw it. K5KWP, Chris, mobile in Fort Worth. No, you did not see it. But Chris, I know you're mobile, and if you're around when we get to you, if you have anything to say about Twilight Zone or time travel or any of that, we will take your comments because they probably apply to this movie. I'll take additional check-ins. Please come now with your call sign name, your location, and did you see The Time Element, The Twilight Zone Backdoor Pilot? Please come now.
WD5OZL, Brenda DeSoto. Yes, I did see it.
Whiskey 5, Echo Bravo Bravo. David, Dallas, yes.
Okay, I got WB50ZL, Miss Brenda DeSoto. Yep, she saw it. W5EVB, David in Dallas. Yep, he saw it as well. Okay, I'll go over to Echolink. Anybody on Echolink who would like to be checked in, come with your call sign name. Let me know where you're transmitting from. Did you see the movie, The Time Element, the Rod Serling backdoor pilot from 1958 for The Twilight Zone?
This is Kilo Golf 5 Bravo Zulu Kilo Golf 5 Bravo Zulu Whiskey J in Weatherford. Yes, I saw it. Might be short time.
This is Kilo Golf 5 Papa Mike at the Texas Star Party. I did not see it.
This is Kilo Golf 5 Papa Mike November James Fort Worth. I saw the movie.
Yeah, I have. KG5BZW, Jay over in Weatherford, and I've got you down for short time, so I'm going to put you at the top of the list. KG5P, Mike over at the Texas Star Party, he did not see it, but Mike, if you can stay awake and stay away from telescopes, no, that's impossible. If you are near your computer, when I call on you, if you got anything on time travel, nosebleeds, and all of that, we'll ask for your comments on that. KG5PMN, James over in Fort Worth. Yes, you saw the movie, so we're good to go. Okay, what I'm going to do then is, since Jay is short time, I'm going to give him first dibs on this round. So Jay, KG5BZW, your comments on plot, and if you think you're going to go away very quickly, anything else about the time element. Jay, KG5BZW, go ahead.
Thank you, Tom. This is KG5BZW. Yeah, just, I'm just really sleepy for all of a sudden. I don't think I'll make it the whole hour. It was an interesting show. I have to admit, the character himself, I had a little bit of trouble getting how to say it, just, I guess the idea was kind of to envision him as the average Joe of some sort, but he just kept on wanting to beat up everybody. It just, I don't know. I'm not sure if there's I guess a certain type or something they're trying to go for there. That I don't know that you see that in modern writing, but it's still, I don't know. I was mildly annoyed by that, but I think it's just a sign of the time that it was made in. See, interesting. Actually, let me reset. All right, interesting device for time travel, and of course, you get the little plot twist at the end. It's one of those it's kind of a. I don't know that it's something that you're really there to watch it and take it completely seriously, but it's there's enough to it, and they don't get too many details that it kind of makes you think. I think. So I don't know. I kind of like the dream idea of dream time travel. I have to admit that. I think this is not the only show I've seen of this, but I have to. I'm sure that whatever I'd seen was kind of a copy of this, but I don't know. I'm sorry. I think I've gotten into complete ramble mode here. The last twist at the only other thing I can really think of that I want to say, the last twist at the end didn't really make sense to me because of actually there's two things that didn't make sense. He pays for the liquor and stuff. Well, I'm kind of curious as to where that cash came from and how was it that he didn't happen to have any legal tender that, how exactly was the legal tender, actually not future made tender and just how did it pop into existence with legal tender that was made before 1941 or but just whatever. Things do have dates associated with them, and I didn't think of clothing or anything like that. But yeah, you're not supposed. Like I said, it's to make it. I think this is a show to make you think and not really to think too deeply about it because it's not set up for that. But anyway, the other thing, I've already forgot what the heck I was saying. And like I'm saying, I'm completely in ramble mode, so I think I'll be listening for the rest of tonight. So thank you all. I'm sorry for. I think I spent a little bit too long. But anyway, KG5BCW, back to that.
Okay, Jerry, thanks for your comments, and I wrote some notes down about the money thing. I think that's rather interesting. And if you've got additional comments, you wake up. You sound tired. It's okay. Just break in, and we'll acknowledge you. So let's go to the top of the list here. I got N5BB, Bill, over in Irving. Your thoughts about the pilot? I think the story has been done before, but Bill, go ahead, from KE5ICX.
I think you meant to say my thoughts about the plot, didn't you?
I thought I did. Did I say something else? And was it more interesting?
You said my thoughts about the pilot, which was a little more all-encompassing. Anyway, this is N5BB. So, I really liked this. I really, really liked it. And the reason I liked it was it had a few very crafty little touches by Rod Serling, where he kind of didn't overplay things, actually. He let, as with the best plots from Rod Serling, he doesn't tell you the answer. He makes something which is a bit ambiguous, and you can argue about what it meant. I can think of at least three interpretations of the plot, and that's exactly what he wanted. And as you go through the thing, you're led to interpretation 1 or 2, and then at the end, there's at least one additional one, at least, which is completely different, which comes up, which I will mention, since we're talking about a plot. So, if I have to say something of the plot, I would say, as far as the whole plot outline, on time travel, etc., or dreams, that version 1 of the plot is what he stated originally to the psychiatrist, or what he told the psychiatrist he thought was the situation. The William Bendix character, who I thought the acting was excellent in this. I thought all the acting was excellent. I was just really happy with the acting and direction. So I thought the William Bendix character, Peter Jensen, he was pretty much convinced that it was real, although he was going to the doctor just to make sure he wasn't crazy. But he seemed to think it was real. That's what he was kind of vacillating back and forth. So if you think about plot number 1 being he really did travel in time, okay? That's what I would say is the plot idea number 1. And you can interpret, I think, the whole film that way. The plot twist number 2 would be he was dreaming. So when he's going to the psychiatrist, everything he's saying is just dreams, and it's just all a dream. Everything you see back there is a dream and everything. And if you view it that way, you could view it that at the end of the film, that maybe he was dreaming the psychiatrist. And so at the end of the film, you're actually seeing that whole thing collapse. It's a dream, including the last part of the film. That could be his dream also. The third interpretation, which you may not have thought of until you view the end of it, is that this is a dream or fantasy of the psychiatrist. So Dr. Gillespie, Martin Balsam, this is all his fantasy or his dream. And he dreams he has a patient that has this dream of going back in time. And then he dreams that the patient went back in time. And I say dreams. He has a fantasy or dream or a hallucination that happened. And then he dreams that this patient went back in time and died. And then the things disappear that relating to him and become fuzzy because it was only a dream. So that's my third interpretation, was that it's the psychiatrist it's in his head. So I think you have to look at all three of those, and I think that Rod Serling wanted you to think about all three of those. And he doesn't give you really scientific proof of any type that time travel did happen. So the guy goes back, and do any of his, he bets on things and does those things. We don't know if any of those prove true. There's absolutely nothing in there with the characters that indicate that, everybody in the past thought he was crazy. They thought he was just saying wild things. And he did not tell them anything which proved true during the movie, the film. So there's actually no real clear statement in this as far as the plot that it really was time travel, which is why I think it's so cool. But you can interpret it that way, and you can interpret the end of it that way, and then you get into the difficulty in interpreting loops and time travel, which of course cannot be fully interpreted. There's always going to be a quandary because you can't go back and figure out where the whole thing started, really. You can't totally unravel that. Anyway, I thought it was a great plot. executed well. That's all I got about plot in 5BB.
Good, thank you, Bill. Sounds like you liked it a lot. Well, you mentioned that several times, and you brought some really interesting elements into it. Okay, this is KE5I6 Net Control. We're talking about the time element. This is a 90-minute Westinghouse Desilu production from Rod Serling that was really a pilot for the Twilight Zone, even though it was not the first episode of the Twilight Zone. Next up is Michael, KI5EBO. Michael, your thoughts about the plot?
Well, what else is there to say after that Sterling analysis? I really liked the film. I really got into it. Frankly, I got most of the way through it and realized I hadn't written any notes. But one of the things is when LaGuardia, the picture of LaGuardia up on the wall, I went, wow, that guy looks like a monster. And, as far as, you can pick apart any film with little details, time travel, money. It was a dream, after all, nobody, I think back then, counterfeit money wasn't the thing it is today, so it's much less likely anybody was going to be spending a lot of time looking at the dates on the, the bills that the guy passed or whatever. So, it's kind of my feel. It's a very interesting premise, typical of Rod Serling. Was it a dream? Did the patient erase himself by getting killed in the past? Did I dream it? I mean, the psychiatrist. It's just really good. And the other comment I had was to the first commenter about the way that everybody seemed to be willing to, jump into a brawl. Maybe that was kind of more the way the attitudes were back then. Everybody had a more finely tuned sense of honor, and if you said something they didn't like, then they were going to, stick up for themselves and make you regret it. And I don't know. I mean, I would think that if in the late 50s, if that's what's being broadcast is the way things were back then there would either have been a big outcry like, hey, this isn't realistic, and it wouldn't have been as widely well received as it was. So, I don't know, I viewed that as a sign of the times, and some people are just crankier than others and more willing to defend themselves. Anyway, that's KI5EBO, back to that.
Hey, Michael, thanks very much. And take notes? You do that? That's excellent. I used to take notes and then I fell asleep, so I take notes everywhere else. Okay, K5KWP, Chris, you're mobile over in Fort Worth. You didn't see the movie. If you're still there, you might not be, but if you are, any comments on time travel, paradoxes, stories, development, Pearl Harbor, going back in time stories? You're up, K5KWP from KE5I6. Okay, I think Chris is gone, but Chris, if you hear your name out there, you can recheck it any time. WB5OZL, Miss Brenda DeSoto, your thoughts on plot? Go ahead.
This is WB5OZL. Oh, what can I say? I have loved Rod Serling for so long. When Twilight Zone first came out, it's like the heavens opened and the angels sang. It's like, where has this been all my life? I was just in love, and I still love those shows. They make you think. They put you, out of your comfort zone, and that's the way this one was. It's like, well, what did happen? Was it really the psychiatrist's dream? Was it real? And it's so thought-provoking. It just sets it apart from other TV shows. The writing is excellent. Serling is just wonderful, and you just can't stop watching it. So, yeah, I was a little amused. How many time travel shows have we seen where the time traveler just has to try and convince everybody he's a time traveler, and it generally doesn't work? Well, you know, what would you do if you went back in time? Would you start trying to tell everybody, or would you keep it a secret? And it just seems to be kind of an impulse all of us have to just start blabbing about stuff that we can't prove. Okay, I'll have more comments later. Back to net, WB50ZL.
Well, thank you, Miss Brenda. Well, you know what? I'll just interject this comment. I've always wanted to do this. I burst into a bar, and I exclaimed, I asked the bartender, what year is it? And then they give, 2019, and I say, I made it, and then burst back out the door. That's what I've always wanted to do. I might do that. In fact, I might do it tonight. Next up is W5EBB. David, you always have thoughtful comments about our movies. What your thoughts on the plot on this one?
To be honest, I've been spending the last 15 minutes, instead of gathering my thoughts, I've been trying to find the rest of the episodes of this science fiction theater, and apparently there was a total of 78 episodes broadcast from 1955 to 1957. And I can't find any place where you can actually view those. And the plot synopsis, according to Wikipedia, the episodes sound very Twilight Zone, Outer Limits-ish, and there would be interesting things to see, but I think they've disappeared in a black hole somewhere. I don't know, maybe we'll find it. But the plot was good. It was as an introduction to time travel fare. This was a good one, and instead of making a huge change in the future, it was a subtle, targeted, carved out change that didn't affect the world broadly, but it did affect some people directly, and that was interesting. That Bill pointed out that an alternative interpretation of it, of course, is that the psychiatrist himself had dreamed it, and he had subliminally recalled that picture of the guy in the bar that he must have visited at some point, and and he incorporates that into his dream. I mean, he's got a couch right there. Of course he's going to take a nap, especially on the day when he doesn't have any patients. Let me reset. So that certainly makes sense. Now, what was not real plausible, though, about the plot was when Bendick starts going crazy in the bar and starts yelling and offending people, and they didn't call security and just haul him away. But I guess they didn't really have that sort of thing back then. It was every man and woman for himself, herself. And if somebody makes you mad, you just punch them. Or you invite them for a drink the next day to try to calm them down. One of those two extremes. And it's also not very, very plausible that the psychiatrist himself, once the guy says, well, I'm traveling back in time, didn't just immediately diagnose him with neurosis and or maybe just give him a frontal lobotomy right there in the office. But it was a different time than today, I guess. W5EBB.
Thank you, David, and I have some comments about that myself and put down bar. By the way, for anybody who's interested, you might want to put your DVR on. If you have Me TV, the first episode of The Invaders is on tonight. We reviewed this, about last summer, I think it was. The Invaders, the Quinn Martin production. So if you want to put it on your... this show rarely gets shown on television, so you may want to put it in your queue and watch it. It was a very popular show for 2 or 3 years. I think it was at least 2 years over on, I think, ABC. Okay, moving along, I've got coming up. Jay, we did Jay. Mike, I think, is gone. He has terrible internet connection anyway. So next up is James, KG5PMN. Your thoughts on the plot? Go ahead. We'll give you extra time. I know you're over on Echolink.
This is KG5PMN. I don't know what else I could add to the plot other than what's already been added. Kind of interesting. I hadn't ever thought about the twist of the psychiatrist having the dream. And Jay's comment about the money, paying cash or paying any type of money has a date on it. So if he was actually coming from 1958, then it would have been some of his money would have had at least a closer date to 1958. Send it back to the net, KG5PMN.
This is Inside BB. Before you leave the plot, I want to make a comment about the money. It can be later. Inside BB.
Bill, hold your thought. I'm going to take additional check-ins, and depending on who we get or don't get, you're at the top of the list. You go ahead and tag that at the beginning of your comments after that with characterization. So that's fine. Go ahead and combine those together. Okay, this is KE5ICX. We're talking about the time element. This is the Rod Serling, kind of a backdoor plot, 90-minute program that introduced the Twilight Zone. If you're listening in this evening and you would like to check in, please come with your call sign, name, where you're transmitting from. Let us know if you saw the time element or not. Please come now. Usually we have some stragglers, but not tonight, so that's okay. Okay, my comments on the plot. I agree with everyone else. I love the plot on this thing. It was well written. It was well conceived. It was fascinating. Bill got into some real deep parts about what perspective did you have in this thing, and I thought that was brilliant. I hadn't really noticed that the first time around. I thought about the fact, is this a dream or is this really going back in time? But the third part is a fantasy of the psychiatrist I hadn't thought of, although probably should have, because it does make perfect sense the way Bill put it out there. My comments about things like money and that, Rod Serling is known for this. Sometimes he leaves out details that are complicating, that block the story. He's more about telling stories about people and their emotions than he is about the etymology, the things that go along with it. And we saw that in the one movie, I can't remember where it is, where the bomb was inside the case of the pilot, Jefferson case that he was carrying around. The fact that the thing would have been heavy, he would have noticed that there's this heavy bomb in the thing. That ruins the story of sorts. So I think Rod had a tendency to ignore things like that. He wasn't one of those policy wonks. More about telling stories about people, which is where he really excelled with Twilight Zone. And it's another reason why I think that he doesn't really go into super details about how all these things got set up. And in fact, in Twilight Zone, he rarely explained, if ever, I don't think he ever explained how these situations were set up, only that they happened and how people reacted to them. And that's how he became a master storyteller in that regard. But as far as writing a factual plot, word for word, probably not Rod Serling when you think about it. Those stories have a tendency to fray along the edges a little bit, but that's not what we remember. Unexpectedly very good. I had never seen it before. I really enjoyed it myself, and I can see where Twilight Zone had gained legs with this televised movie. So I'm going to go to the top of the list, N5BB. Bill, go ahead with you had additional comments, and then after that, regarding the plot, after that, go ahead and go into characterization. So Bill, N5BB from KE5ICX.
N5HYP, wait.
I thought you were going to ask for additional check-ins, Tom.
Actually, I did, but Tom came in, so I'll go ahead and take Tom, and then I'll go back up to the top. Bill, Tom, N5HYP, did you get a chance to see the time element? And we're talking about plot, so you're on the first round. Your comments.
This is N5HYP. Yes, Holly and I did watch it. It wasn't unexpectedly good. And you are right. Rod Serling is really great on dealing with people's reactions. You don't need to, I guess, in the stories like that, you don't need to really know the setup. You just want to really be able to look at the story and look at the people and look at how they deal with the situation. And thus it was a really a fine little story for what it was. And, you know, he very nicely did deal with the rules of time travel and what happens when you alter when events would get altered by going back in time, and in this case, not being there. You know, 18 years later. Great story. Loved it. Back to net. N5HYP.
All right, thank you, Tom, and we'll come back to you on characterization. So now we'll go to the top of the list. N5BB, Bill, your comments on characterization. You had some comments on plot still. Go ahead, Bill, from KE5I6.
And Tom, this is N5BB. First, just a little comment there about the time travel looping. Depending on how you view the paradox of time travel, which it's nearly always viewed as some kind of paradox, you might not, depending on where you are in your time thread, you might not see somebody disappearing like this. Kind of depends on how you view time. But that's a physics kind of thing, and a philosophy kind of thing. I don't think we want to get heavily into that when discussing this, so I'm not going to. Anyway, with regards to the money, so I think he did a very crafty job if you look at the hints he gave us. So, he set this all up so he doesn't have to explain it, okay? Here's my premise. Where is he? He's in a hotel. Where does he go to drink? As I understand it, it's the hotel bar. So if you're staying at a hotel and you're in the hotel bar, you just write the tab over to your room. There's no need for him to pay anything. And he didn't have to pay for the hotel room. He didn't even know how he got there. So he's just there in the hotel, and at the bar, all he has to do is write the thing off to the room. You don't see any money out on the table. You don't see any discussion of it. There's no need to, if you really think about it. He just writes it off to the bar. So I agree with you, Tom. He doesn't. He kind of. Rod Serling can just skip certain points. But in this case, I think he very craftily designed it so he didn't have to skip anything. The more you think about it, the more you see. He wouldn't have had to put any money out at all. And you don't see him looking, you notice, you don't see him looking in his wallet to see if he has money in his wallet with a certain date. You don't see him looking in his wallet for a driver's license or anything else. That doesn't come up. And the reason it doesn't come up may just be because it's a dream, or it may not come up because he didn't think about it. It's not needed. It's a detail that's extraneous to the story. In any sense, that's my take on the money. He just wrote it off to the whole pilgrim. Now, the characterization, and I'm assuming you mean also the acting. I thought the acting was excellent by everybody. I was just pleased. I thought the choice, I thought the casting was excellent. So the interesting thing is that Martin Balsam, the psychiatrist, was always also on the movie whose name I can't remember, which involved Pearl Harbor Day. And I'm afraid I'll make a mistake. There were several of them, and I'm afraid I'll remember the wrong one. But he was an admiral or something on one of those movies. And some of the movies involving Pearl Harbor Day did involve time travel, but there's other ones just involving the actual events of that day. And I know that he was in at least one of those movies. As far as the characterization, really liked William Bendix as Peter Jensen, the protagonist. And I think there was a comment somebody made, maybe Jay, that he was overly kind of aggressive, and somebody else said, well, they would have, thrown him in jail or done something. Well, I think that was written in there on purpose. You're led to believe that William Bendix may not be a reliable narrator, okay? Why? He drinks. He drinks to excess. He drinks every chance he can. He's got a bottle in the room when he wakes up initially. He goes down to the bar and he drinks, and he drinks lots. That's one reason he may not, he's shown he may not be a reliable narrator. Number two, he's got a really aggressive personality, so he's a little bit borderline anyway. So you kind of see why maybe he's going to a psychiatrist, because what does he do? He wants to beat everybody up just because they disagree with him for no reason. If you were going back in time, would you want to beat somebody up just because they didn't believe that Pearl Harbor Day was going to occur the next day? Why in the world would you do that? So I think they characterize William Bendix, the Peter Jensen character, as having a few screws loose. He's an unstable character anyway, which adds to the niceness of the plot, the layering of the different ways you can interpret it. I think that's a great touch by Serlings, is making that character so unreliable. I think William Bendix played it just perfectly. He was a great actor. And Martin Balsam played Dr. Gillespie, the psychiatrist, very well. You'll notice that William Bendix, early in the thing, comments about how the doctor's so calm and kind of disconnected. And he's kind of egging the doctor on about how the doctor is acting that way. And sure enough, Martin Balsam is great at playing that kind of character. And also it kind of leads you to believe, like, my plot twist number 3, where he imagined it all. Maybe he's not perfectly stable psychologically either. So I thought that was a great little twist. Daryl Hickman, who is Dwayne Hickman's older brother. So it's not what Dobie Gillis character, it's his older brother. And he was actually a very reliable actor back then. He was in lots and lots and lots of things in the 50s and 60s. And he played the ensign, the guy that was going to die the next day at Pearl Harbor on the Arizona. I think he played it just straight, just exactly right, emotionally and everything. I really like that. And his wife also. she wasn't a big character in it, but I thought that characterization of that couple was great. I think they played it great as a newlywed couple. I liked it all. I liked her concern for Peter Jensen, whether he was okay mentally. I liked all of that. And then you had Jesse White, the bartender. I've seen that guy before in other things, too. He was a known character actor. And I thought he played it right. You know, he did the bartender, hey, guy, you're going to fight in my bar. You know, if anybody's going to knock somebody out, I'll do it. And he does it at one point. So, I thought the characterization was great. I thought they had great actors doing it. And I was just pleased. Habibi.
Thanks, Bill. Excellent analysis. KI5EBO. Michael, your thoughts about characterization. Go ahead. This is KE5ICS.
Well, I mean, you know, once again, what is there to say after that sterling analysis? Okay, I did it twice. The one thing I did want to mention was Martin Balsam was an admiral in Tora Tora. Props to you for Don for remembering that he was even in another Pearl Harbor movie. I don't know. I mean, I really enjoyed the film. I really enjoyed the production values. I was drawn into the story, and I think that is because the characters were believable, except for the fact that, you know, I thought they were a little more aggressive than we're used to these days, but, you know, I can still see that. Especially with the fact that, you know, everything was probably somewhat tense in the early 40s, because even though we weren't in the war, the rest of the world was, and, you know, there was a lot of activity and stuff, and there were tensions because, you know, we saw everything, or we as a country could see everything going on around us. We just hadn't gotten sucked into it. So, I don't know, I don't have any notes to go, you know, at this point, or anything really more than what's already been said, because, you know, I either he's got to get ahead of John or make more notes. Anyway, KFI-VBO, back to net.
Thank you, Michael, and I think we're beginning to build a consensus about characters and drawing you into the characters and their dilemmas. WB5OZL, Miss Brenda, your comments on characterization. Go ahead.
WB5OZL. Well, yeah, we've got a consensus here. This was really a good show, and everybody loved it, and it was well done, and extremely watchable, and I would not mind watching it again. And characterization is just part of that whole puzzle that makes, makes a good show. You've got to have good characters. Any piece of the puzzle and everything falls flat. I just always remember William Bendix's The Line for Riley. It was a little hard at first to think of him as this serious role, but but he nailed it. He's a good actor. They were all good actors, and I have no problem with any of them. Well, I mean that's it. Back to that. WB5OZL.
Okay, very Very good, Brenda. Let's move on to W5EVB. David in Dallas, your comments on characterization.
I must have an attention issue because I've drifted from characters to looking up the the synopses of some of the 78 episodes, which I'd like to share with you. And they seem rather prophetic. Let's see. A genetics research scientist attempts to prove that memories can be inherited. He uses a remarkable series of coincidences as evidence. And for us radio operators, a scientist builds a transmitter that operates in a never-before-attained frequency band. Using the new device, he and his colleagues receive new scientific information from a voice that refuses to identify itself or its country of origin, probably using Olivia or FT8 or something. Here's a good one. A university professor nullifies gravity with a magnetic field. Actually, I have one of those. And this is pertinent for today. A car with no driver is running around in the desert and occasionally hits people but does not stop. You know all this auto lane keeping technology that's being rolled out into cars these days? Yeah. But briefly getting on topic, the characters, yeah, the acting was very good. And this series has some top-notch actors in it, too. DeForest Kelley, June Lockhart, Vincent Price. Quality stuff. And, yeah, I just ordered the entire set on DVD. W5EBB.
I have to ask a question, David. I'm thinking you're maybe thinking of One Step Beyond or some other series. Well, what is the name of the series?
That is correct. That is one that sounds similar, but it's not the same. But this one is, let's see if I can find it in the browser here. It actually is, let's see, the Shout Factory is the one that sells this, and it is of this particular one, the science fiction theater, 78 episodes. So yeah, it is available, and it was released in 2015. W5EBB.
Okay, fine. I've got it here. I actually typed in some of your comments, and it did bring up science fiction theater, but I'm not familiar with this series, so I thought this is rather interesting. The movie we saw actually says One Step Beyond Alternatives or something like that, so it gets brought up on One Step Beyond. This is the movie that we watched. Oh, well, it's sort of a circuitous thing, but I'm going to check out the science fiction theater. I think that would be most interesting. I'm not familiar with it, and it's in color. Okay. Let's see. Jay is gone. Mike's gone. Let's go down to James, KG5PMN. Your comments on characterization. Characterization.
This is KG5PMN. Don't know how much else I can add on the characters. I thought that everybody did a pretty good job of acting, and the guy that we initially thought was having the dreams did a good job of time travel back to 1941, and kind of wondered when he first woke up in that hotel room or motel room and saw that calendar, was it actually right before Pearl Harbor Day, and that's what it turned out to be. I'll send it back to the net, KG5PMN.
Very good. This is KE5ICX. I'm net control for tonight's Afterglow Movie Net. We're talking about the time element. This is the Rod Serling backdoor pilot. Actually, it was the pilot for The Twilight Zone, which eventually was produced, but this is a Westinghouse Desilu production ahead of time, which helped to sell the series. Are there any additional check-ins, new people who would like to join us this evening who have not already, who would like to discuss the time element? You don't necessarily have to have seen it, but if you'd like to talk about time travel or science fiction and all that, we enjoy that conversation. If you're just out there listening, that's fine too. Let us know you're there. We won't beat you up and ask you tons of questions. Any additional check-ins, please come now.
Kilo Zero Victor Delta, Sam in Plano.
This is November 5 Alpha Bravo Alpha, Andre in Dallas Mobile.
Hey, I've got two in there. I think, Dan, and I hope I got this right. Dan in Plano, K0 Victor Delta. Did I get that right, Dan?
Yeah, that's correct. Call sign. The name is Sam, Sierra Alpha Mike.
Oh, Sam, all right, welcome aboard. Did you get a chance to see the time element, or do you have any comments about time travel in general?
Negative. Just listening in. Appreciate the conversation. Thanks.
All right, well, thanks for checking in. It's always nice to know that folks are listening in and enjoying the net, or if you're not, that's okay. You can tell us if you're not. I think you are. N5ABA, Andre over in Dallas. He's mobile. He must be going from here to there. Andre, did you get to see the movie, or are you just checking in?
Good evening, Tom, and everybody in the net. I'm just checking in. I have not seen the movie. We are driving back to the QTH, so I decided to just tune in and listen to the conversation on the way home. This is N5ABA.
Thanks, Andre. And it is appreciated. We always kind of like to know if folks are listening in, and we can tell them all about, cliff notes and all of that. Okay, my comments on the characterization. Certainly, I certainly enjoyed it, and everybody's made comments about our principal characters and how well they were portrayed. I agree. There was one comment in there, I think earlier, talking about what's the deal with the everybody ready to punch each other out. I'm not sure. There was some real fear at the time about Japan and their empireistic leanings. Well, more than that at that point, 1941 potential attack. That may have weighed heavily on the characters or not. It does make for drama. We do know that punching people out is always a common thing to use in television. Back in 1958 and today. So I suspect possibly, my guess is, and I'm double guessing, a dead guy, and that is that you got to add and introduce some action to the series. In essence, there's only, 2 rooms in this place, which is, that was one of the comments I was going to make earlier, and I did not. There's 2 rooms. We have the bar, and we have the hotel room, and that's basically it. And we bounce back and forth between those 2 places. Now, I've been watching on television, I'll digress only for a moment, but this is a kind of the low-budget, easy way to do something. I've been watching The Avengers, not Endgame. This is the original Avengers. This is the television series from 1962 through 1967 or 8. With John Steed and Emma Peel. And essentially the early stories done with Gail, I can't think of her name, were videotaped on 2 sets. You had the primary set, wherever it might be. It could be an apartment, could be a bus station, could be something. And then the second set is where something develops, in this case one of these espionage things. So you have just these 2 sets, and that's it. And they did them pretty much in real time. They were videotaped. You got one rehearsal, and then you did the actual performance, and you didn't stop. If you made a mistake, you made a mistake. Let me reset. This story is pretty much the same way, and I take take that back. There is the psychiatrist's office. So there's 3 sets, freestanding sets that are used through this thing. And that's it. So to fill in the blank, to fill in all of the action, to fill in the story, to be able to fulfill what you need to do in 60 minutes or an hour and a half. It might have been 60-minute show, I don't remember now, but it was more than a half hour, obviously. You need to develop the interplay between the characters and develop that up quite a bit. And having watched the Avengers over the last several weeks now, 2 episodes, Monday through Friday, you realize that this is a very common technique when you're doing low-budget television, which is essentially what this was, low-budget, although I think it was filmed, which is a Desilu trait, which made it a little better. So that's my thought. Characterization, of course, gets better built up. Oh, one more thing on the characters. We have our main character there, Peter Jensen. He keeps saying, I know I'm nuts. I understand that, and you need to tell me why I'm not nuts or how you're going to fix my problem. And Gillespie kind of takes this back, somewhat smug but realistic approach to the thing. Well, I'm here to help, and I'll do what I can to help you, so never fear, everything's fine, let's be calm. If you want to use the sofa, that's fine, or the, whatever it is, they're both and sizing each other up. One says, you're going to think I'm nuts, and the other one says, no, I don't think you're nuts, or are you? And so it kind of falls into these characters, wink, wink, nod, nod, we know what's happening, but we'll work it out, and everything's fine, and then it's not. I think that's really fascinating. We do this at work. We self-deprecate ourselves at times in order to win approval or win friendship or otherwise win some sort of act in a conciliatory way. So I thought that really fit in well. Normally that's not how the characters are portrayed, and particularly back then with everybody is one-dimensionally deep, and when they get mad, there's a reason, and you're right and I'm wrong, and the narrator says so, and that's the end of it. And this is certainly something different from that. Okay, those are my comments. This is KE5ICX. It's 11:44, so what I'm going to do, there weren't a lot in the way of special effects. In fact, there were none, if you really want the whole schlemiel on it. So what I'm going to do is open it up and ask for comments, anything you would like, techniques that were used, lighting, potentially storyline, something that you thought was curious. Does it match up with the Twilight Zone? Any of those things, something that you would like to say. I don't know if this will be final round. We've had great discussions, but it might be. Unless you want to say something about special effects, which would be about 4 words. There were none. Go ahead. N5BB. Bill, you start us off.
This is N5BB. I saw some comments somewhere that the music was used in some other movie or television show, but now I can't remember what it was. I thought the production was great, actually. It's interesting you talked about the you can use the couch or not. So if you'll notice early in it, he's sitting there, he's not on the couch. And then suddenly later he's laying down. And it's nearly like, that's when he's making that final dream. So he's kind of going back and forth between laying on the couch and he's laying on the bed back in 1941. It's kind of going back and forth there. There are a lot of little details like that. I really think that, in fact, who directed this? Hey, Tom, I got a question for you. Did Did Rod Serling direct this?
That I'm not sure. I don't think he did, but I'm just guessing on that. No, I don't know. I really do not know. KE5ICX.
Well, I didn't even think about that. I didn't notice that. I know that Desilu produced these things, but I don't know who directed it. But anyway, you're right. They didn't need any fancy sets to make all this work. I mean, the bar looked perfectly like a bar. I could totally believe in that. And his hotel room looked like a hotel room, and the psychiatrist's office looked like that. And, you know, this was all in the head. You know, this is all kind of a mental thing, and so it didn't need... It was supposed to be a dream, or it might have been a dream, so it didn't need to have all these other sets and outdoor things and things. You know, he does open the windows and see the planes flying over. So if you want to say were there special effects, it were him opening the blinds and watching the airplanes flying over. And then at the end, the gunshot coming through and hitting him. Those are the only, quote, special effects, unquote. Man, I was going to say something else, and of course I've forgotten what it was. N5BB.
N5HYP.
Tom, I'm sorry. Did I miss you in the stuff? I think I might have. I'm sorry. My apologies. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, it's understandable. I showed up late. Characterization. I thought our lead character was a little bit on the over-the-top side, but then again, you got to look at this. These were all done pretty much like plays. I mean, you could have put this on stage for the most part, and it would have been just pretty much the same. A lot of 50s television dramas were basically could have been plays or were plays. So thus the characterizations were all kind of sort of in that vein. However, again, you're supposed to really think about the story here, and the characters are just vehicles for the story. That's my comment. Back to Nat. This is N5HY.
Thank you, Tom, and those are all good comments. I think that's maybe what I was doing in a very untactful way is alluding to the story being, scoped on stage, and many shows in the 50s and 60s were done like that, which meant that the writing had to be up a notch in order to make that work. Today, we have a tendency, and I don't want to digress, but we have a tendency to use pull out all the stops for special effects and lighting and lots of action moving from scene to scene, and that helps to push the story along. But back then, in order to do that, everything had to be constructed and made, and as such, that's very expensive, whereas if you can write something and tell the story and make it compelling and keep people there watching the screen and then buying your product, well, goodness, we don't have to use that 2x4 to make it happen. So the stories have a tendency to be better. The plots run a little more slowly at times, but it's because of the narration, the alliteration that's going on that really makes the stories work. Okay, let's see here. I think I may be all messed up here. I think next is Michael. Let's see here. I think I'm right. KF5EVO, Michael, over in Plano. Your comments, anything you want. That's right. We're on the third round. I was confused by my notes on first and second. We're on the third round. So, Michael, go ahead. Anything you want to say about this? Time travel, you love it? Nosebleeds, anything you want to say? This is your chance. Go ahead. KF5EBO from KE5I6.
Well, it's glad that you've caught up to the party now since you were the one bringing us all along. But I didn't want to be Mr. Pedantic. Okay, so I do. But you forgot the newspaper office. I almost forgot the newspaper office. So, that supports that. I looked it up just now. The director of this was Alan Reisner, who has a whole bunch of other credits, including The Twilight Zone, The Green Hornet, Mannix, and many other shows that we watched. So, fairly famous director, and this wasn't his first outing. And then, speaking about Fire Our Product, I thought the particularly pointed ad at the end of the show for the Lucy and Desi refrigerator was really nice. It looked like, it looked like a pretty modern refrigerator, although it was tiny. What was that, 12 cubic feet? I don't know. I guess that's about all I've got at the moment. KF5EBO, back to that.
Well, Michael, you can be sure if it's Westinghouse. And when you think about that phrase, which I remember because it went into the 60s, you can be sure if it's Westinghouse. I don't even know what that means, but you can be sure. Okay, next up, WB5OZL, Miss Brenda, your comments on anything you want. Tell us.
WB5OZL. Oh, gee. I don't know about Westinghouse. I'm not sure about it. I was looking up the director's list, and he had just zillions of credits to his name, but he would do one or two episodes of these various, one episode of Marcus Welby and one episode of Kung Fu. So I guess he was a visiting director and all these things. Well, let's see. I think we've kind of beat this horse already. I don't have anything else insightful to say, or any real complaints. One thing I've noticed tonight, we don't have a lot of people picking it apart like we usually do with most of our shows. Because I guess because it was so good. But I mean, you could, if you wanted to, I guess pick it apart a little bit, but I would rather not. All right, I'm tired. I think this is it for me. WB5OZL.
Hey, Miss Brenda, we got you down, and you're tired. This is probably the last round. There's only a few more people left, and we'll say so long, farewell. Next up, W5EBB, David, your final thoughts, comments, anything you want to say. You're up from KE5I6.
This particular plot could maybe add to the I guess the library of rules about time travel. And one you might say is you can't make substantial changes in the timeline. There's just too much momentum against doing something like successfully alerting Pearl Harbor of the impending attack. And maybe there's some sort of time travel referee that kind of prevents that from happening. And maybe drawing on the movie Inception, when you start to do something drastic and call attention to yourself, others in your environment start to notice and then could, disrupt your plans. So if you want to successfully change something significant in the timeline, I think you have to be more surreptitious and sneaky and casual about it. And one final comment, about the different interpretations of the plot. And, well, indeed, it could be extended beyond just a fictional story. I just said last night, some other faculty than the intellect is required for the apprehension of reality. Actually, Henri Bergson said that in the early 1900s, Pulitzer Prize winner. But I said it last night too. W5EBB.
Okay, thank you, David. Yeah, I remember that too. I think that was in a Star Trek episode as well. But I won't mention. I don't even remember what it was called. But it had Lord Garth in it. Let's see. Next up is James, KG5PMN, over in Fort Worth. Your final comments on tonight's motion picture, The Time Element.
This is KG5PM, and I guess one of my thoughts is for the time travel, whichever way they were traveling, whether or not he was going back or the psychiatrist was going forward, whichever way they went, at least Rod Serling didn't make a big production out of having some type of a time travel machine in play. KG5PM in, back to the net.
Agreed. Let's see. Now, I'm going to give Tom and Holly a chance. N5HYP. Tom, I won't promise I would not miss you this time, so you got the final say. Well, after you, then there's me. But you got anything you would like to say? Any final comments? Anything at all about this motion picture or anything you'd like to see going forward? Go ahead, Tom.
N5HYP, you're not much more. It was a good show. We really liked it. So thanks for picking it. Holly said, "Good job, Tom General. You picked a good one." Back to that from N5HYP.
Elvis has left the building.
Thanks, Holly, for me for that. But tell her I appreciate it, and yeah, I still owe her $20 for that. And this is KE5ICX, my final comments. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. I like time travel stories. They can be done very well or they can be done very poorly. This one was done very well. It was done in such a way that you're wondering, what really happened? Did this actually occur? How does this all play out in the end? And really, then you go back and you say, it doesn't matter. This has to do with people, which is what I mentioned on the last round. And I think that's what really made Twilight Zone shine as a series, is that it does not explain the unexplainable. Why would you want to do that? I did want to mention that the new series that has recently come out, it's on the CBS All Access, has had, I think they're up to 4 episodes now, maybe 5. All of them, I've seen 4 of the 5, I think, has been excellent, very good. However, and they are in the 1-hour format. So if you have an opportunity and you don't mind going through a paywall, go ahead and watch these episodes. They're well done. I don't have the information on the guy who's actually producing it, but he's no slouch. He is a worthy successor of Rod Serling. He is also the person who narrates, just like Rod Serling did. He even dresses like Rod Serling. Is that a bad thing? Not at all. The stories are excellent, they're timely, and they're well worthwhile, and they're in a 1-hour format, which is what Rod Serling originally wanted to do. If you get a chance, go ahead and watch the series. I think you'll find it quite interesting, and I'm very curious as to how it all plays out. Let's see. Comments on music. Bill mentioned this, N5BB. CBS is well known for doing what they call, I think, music stubs or music tracks. And that's essentially is they jealously, if it was done at CBS Television City, they would go ahead and record and put on LP the tracked music. And then that would be available for other series. This has gone on for years. I didn't realize this until a couple of months ago, and some of these LPs are available on eBay, and you'll get CBS Track Music LP 123, and it will tell you the original origins of the music. It might have been on Gunsmoke, it might have been on Twilight Zone, it might have been this or that, and that music then becomes available, or did become available, for other productions, and you just simply used it. Stock music, in essence, and very, very, very interesting. And that a lot of that music is being reconstructed for aficionados such as myself that love that sort of thing from other series. So in short order, a lot of the music does show up elsewhere. I'll give you one example which is pretty cool. There's some music from the Twilight Zone. It was a rare stereo track. I can't remember the episode, but the music was used as the theme for CBS Radio Mystery Theater back in the 1970s with E.G. Marshall. That classic booming music at the very beginning actually came from the Twilight Zone and was used in one of their episodes. All right, I'm going to call it quits for this evening. I appreciate everybody's comments. I learned some things here that I didn't know about this movie, and that's one of the things I really enjoy about this net, is that people bring in their cliff notes. They also bring in real understanding and in-depth analysis of stories. Even if they're bad, they have a tendency to teach, and I appreciate that. Next week, we're going to do something a little different. That was because I couldn't find anything that we hadn't seen before. Well, that's changed. I found that Tubi or not Tubi, it's actually Tubi.com, has a bunch of movies, and I will start adding them to the list. Many of them very bad, some of them okay, a couple of them really good that we have not seen. But that's not what we're doing next week. We're going to do two movies. One of them is a short subject called Rakka, R-A-K-K-A, from 2017 about alien invasions. And then another one called Prelude to Axanar from 2014, which was this incredible crowdfunding movie thing that was designed to be something even bigger. It didn't happen. Very Star Trek. In fact, it was so Star Trek that Paramount came down on them and told them stop. It's fascinating. Both of these are very short. Total time to watch this is under an hour, probably 45 minutes, so you'll have a chance to see both of them. I will post these up on the Afterglow Movie Facebook page, and I will send them out via email. Rakka, R-A-K-K-A, from 2017, and Prelude to Axanar, A-N-A-X-A-R. If you write those down, you will readily find them on YouTube, and you can watch them. That will be for next week. So unless anybody has any final comments, this is KE5ICX. I'm going to go ahead and clear out, but if you have anything you'd like to say, come on back. I'll be here for a few minutes. This is KE5ICX. 7-3, everybody.
JG5PMN.
David, go ahead. And you actually doubled with somebody, but go ahead, David, and I'll pick up the other call.
Yeah, just real quick then. If you Google Shout Factory Science Fiction Theater, separate words, you'll get links to this DVD set, the 78 episodes. And I see it's available also on Amazon.com and also Shout Factory. So Shout Factory Science Fiction Theater, W5EBB.
Thank you, David. And we have the following week, The Terminator from 1984, and it has the Shout Factory logo on it as well, so they produced a version of that. Cool. Very good. And I was not aware of the science fiction theater thing, so I am very excited about that. I'm going to check it out. There was another station out there. Go ahead. This is KE5ICX.
It's KG5PMN. I'm just going to make a comment that the Desilu Playhouse had something to do also with the TV show Untouchables on CBS. KG5PMN.
Yes, absolutely. The Untouchables was done as Desilu production. It was a dramatic series, which was different for Desilu back then. When that went out of production, there was the Lucy show on television, and the Andy Griffith show, and I know those two. They were very popular, but there was nothing else on. There was after the Untouchables, there was no dramatic series. So there was, who's the guy who did it? I can't think of his name now. He was the guy that worked, who was the executive over at Desilu. He went out and tried to sell one or two new series. One of them was called Mission Impossible, and the other one was Star Trek. And he went in and he tried to sell these two series. Well, he managed to sell both series. He came back, and Lucille Ball was in charge, and she asked him, so how'd it go? He said, I sold both series. And she looked at him and said, are you nuts? I can't afford both series. I want you to sell one or the other. And so both series ended up going on the air, and it was quite fascinating. And suddenly Desilu was back in the dramatic series television business. So Desilu and all that. I thought that was a pretty cool story. There's a whole thing that goes along with it. God, why can I not remember the guy's name? I'll think of it eventually. Douglas S. Kramer. That's who it was. Just came to me from a credit that went through my head. Doug Kramer.
BB.
Oh, Bill, the net's over. Just jump in.
Yep, I just was jumping in to make sure nobody else was wanting to get back with you first. This is kind of the golden age in television, the 50s and 60s. And I'm really addicted to a lot of the Alfred Hitchcock and Perry Mason's also. But the Alfred Hitchcock ones, and some of the Alfred Hitchcock ones are kind of, they're surprise endings. They're not the same as the Rod Serling kind of typical thing, but they, a lot of them do have surprise endings. Some have great actors, many of them do. They're produced really nicely with great directors and everything. So there was some good stuff going on back then. Of course, there's a lot of junk, but there were a lot of good programs from some of those, great artists that made it on the air. Good night. This is N5BB.
Bill, and you had some great comments. I really enjoyed it. And we'll talk to you soon. Have a good evening. Have pleasant dreams. That's from something. KE5ICX clear.
Seeing you in 5BB.